Hello and welcome to the Fluency Mindset Hacks course for you English speakers who want to improve your English speaking skills and to be able to clearly and confidently communicate in English. So if you're someone who needs to overcome that anxiety or those fears or those internal dialogues that prevent you from speaking confidently in English, then this is the course for you. So this course is going to be able to help you guys to be able to identify any negative mindsets that you might have and be able to know how to overcome those mindsets. I've identified, after teaching over 1,000 students how to speak English, I've identified these 5 major mindset hacks that have helped them to overcome and be able to speak confidently in English. So what I want to do is I want to help you guys by providing you these 5 mindset hacks that I've identified and discovered as I've helped thousands of people learn how to speak English over the years, and identified these 5 as being the biggest problem areas for other English learners. So I moved to Spain about 3 years ago, and I just wanted to share a little bit of my story. When I first moved to Spain 3 years ago, I didn't speak any Spanish. I didn't learn Spanish at school, and I hadn't done any research or study when I arrived here in Spain. But yeah, I wanted to go on some adventures. I wanted to meet some new people, so I got myself involved in some of the culture here. Went down to the beach on the evenings and played some beach volleyball, got involved with some friends there, and also was going to salsa classes where I met other people as well. And so after we would go to the activities, we would go for a beer and we would begin to talk and share our lives together. The problem was that in Spanish, it was very difficult for me to engage. Often I would become distracted and often I'd become frustrated at my inability to be able to engage with them and be able to meet them and share with them my stories. I would be listening, I would be understanding the majority of what they were trying to say, but then when it was my turn to speak, I didn't really know how to engage. I began to overanalyze, I began to think, is this the correct grammar, or should I say it like this, or was I meant to say it like that? And I just became overwhelmed. That lack of ability and confidence meant that I was no longer able to share as well as I would with native English speakers. And as the weeks went on, I felt like I wasn't connecting with them the way that I would really like to. As I analyzed my own mindsets, I realized that I was also falling into the same trap. As I was sitting there every week listening to other people's stories, I was overanalyzing in my head and I was building up this sense of fear of making a mistake. Fear of speaking out in case I'd spoke in the wrong tense or the wrong grammatical form. So instead of this, I took my own advice, as I normally give to my clients, and I began to think about this mindset hack. So mindset hack number 1 is let it go, let it flow. So some of the biggest problems I've noticed with other speakers and also myself in Spanish is that at the beginning, when we're overly analyzing, we're in this very logical mindset. This logical mindset is always analyzing the structure and making sure that we're getting it correct. Now, that's perfect if we're in a learning environment and we're looking to break it down and understand it. But when we're in a conversational environment, when people are talking, when there's noises around us, we have to be able to just jump in. We have to be able to just get involved with the conversation, and if we're going to make mistakes, we're going to make mistakes. But if we don't communicate, this is what's going to happen to our relationships. We're going to feel further and further apart, further and further distance from the people that we're really trying to connect with. And that's what we don't want. We want to be encouraged. We want to be motivated as language learners. And if we don't get that distance nice and close, which means sharing our stories, sharing ourselves, sharing the jokes that come to mind, even if they're imperfectly structured, I think that this is the most important thing, is that people will appreciate that we're making the effort to try to communicate with them, which is ultimately the goal of language. It's about communication. It's about trying to communicate one human to another. So this rule, mindset hack, is let it go, let it flow. If you are over-analyzing in your head and worried too much about the grammatical form and not speaking out when you have the opportunity, this hack is for you. So what would I do if I am stuck in this particular mindset hack? So the hack is that you identify the fact that you're in this over-analyzing state and you begin to break out of that state. How do we do that? I'm going to tell you. So there's a fun game that I love to play with my clients, which is called Yes, and. This is actually a game I learned when I did stand-up comedy, and it's actually a little routine that they do, and it's called yes and. So every time I say a sentence, you say yes and you add a sentence to it. Okay, we're going to play. Not really, we can't do it in person, but just imagine that we're playing this game. So I say the elephant took a ride on the bus. Yes, and the elephant tried to sit down, but there was a mouse on the seat. Yes, and the mouse shrieked out loud. Yes, and the elephant was so embarrassed that he decided to get off the bus and walk to work. Okay, so something silly, something lighthearted. All I'm doing is I'm not giving my brain too much time to analyze what I'm going to say next. Only rule is I say yes, I agree with the sentence that I said before, and I add to the story. So it can be any sentence. So I'll say the first sentence to myself. The elephant wanted to ride on the bus. And then I immediately say yes and I add the next sentence. Now, if I'm out with friends, what I'll actually do is try to get into this state before I know I'm going to have to use the conversation. So for example, I go to the bathroom and I'm taking 5 minutes, or I go outside on my telephone and I can talk to myself for 5 minutes inside my head to break out and snap out of this analyzing mode and get myself in a production mode. I don't want to be analyzing my mind. I want to be producing language, and I want to be expressing that language. I want to be expressing out loud the language that I'm trying to produce. So I would play this game for 5 minutes. I play it with myself, or I would maybe do it before I go out. If I know I'm going to go to a social environment, I'm going to be in a social atmosphere, I want to break down that over-analyzing role of my brain, and I want to break through from that and start to produce sentences. So hack number 1, let it go, let it flow. Break away from that fear of speaking by first putting yourself in a position where you start to produce sentences. You play this lighthearted game with yourself and you break out of that fear and just get involved. Jump in, step into the conversation, add something, add a story, add some kind of anecdote, add something that you think would be funny and help to bring some joy to the table. Think of this example as a kayaker who's about to go from the side of the river into the middle of the river. If you imagine, if you've ever tried this, or you've had a paddle and you've tried to paddle at the beginning from a boat. If you've ever had this paddle and you've tried to pull the boat to start it moving, how much force do you use? You use a lot of force in the beginning. It's exactly like this as we begin to break out of our analytic mode to be able to move into a more flowing motion. Just like the paddler of the kayak, at the first few pulls, he has to pull himself from the side of the river into the flow of the river. But once the kayaker's in the flow of the river, what happens? He's able to travel down the river and direct his movements extremely easily. It's very similar in speaking a language. When we first try to speak, when we first try to get ahead, when we start trying to say our first few sentences or maybe the first story of the night, it really does feel like we're putting in a lot of effort and a lot of heavy lifting. But what you'll notice is that after a few minutes, after 10, 15 minutes of pulling yourself into the middle of the river, the whole rest of the night will flow. That's what you want. You want to get out of the side of the river where it's difficult, but you must put in that hard-earned work. 10, 15 minutes, get yourself into the middle of the river and enter that flow of speaking where you don't need to analyze or cut yourself off. Use this little hack to get yourself flowing and into the flow of speaking in English so that you can confidently communicate. Mindset hack number 2. This is the hack where I've found that a lot of students can sometimes feel like they're the imposter syndrome. I like to call it the imposter syndrome. You just don't feel like yourself when you're speaking in English. Maybe in your native language, maybe you're Spanish, maybe you're Italian, maybe you're Russian. Maybe in your native language, you feel like you have a sense of identity. But when you're speaking in English, for some reason, you feel like an actor. You feel like an actor putting on a performance, and that person is not you. And this leads you to feel like you're being inauthentic when you're communicating. So in the end, you end up communicating in a clunky and inauthentic manner. You sense that your communication doesn't feel natural, and you don't feel like you're able to connect with other people the same way you would in your own language. Okay, so this hack of the imposter syndrome, For me, the way to deal with this one is that you just have to realize that this is not someone who is performing who is not you, but it's actually a new aspect of your personality. Like all languages, they have different rhythms, different cadences, different expressions, different mouth movements. All of these physicalities and all of these differences in rhythm actually affect how we feel about how we communicate. So all of these physiological and also musical differences to how we communicate does actually create a sense of a different identity. But this is not something that should be seen as a negative thing, but actually as an extension of who you already are. Learning a language is actually more like becoming another aspect of who you are. Learning something new about your personality that you have never discovered before. So my hack for this would be bring curiosity, bring relaxation, and also bring the idea that this is actually an adventure, discovering something about yourself that you never knew you had before. Because at the end of the day, your natural native language and the structures, whether that's the sounds or whether that's the speed of the language, have been pre-programmed for you as you were born. You learned them from your environment. You learned them from your parents. You learned them from the school that you were taught at. So all of these structures were already given to you as a predetermined way of communication, just like another language. So when you're speaking in English, see it as an opportunity to find out, okay, who am I as an English speaker? So for example, when I'm learning how to speak Spanish, I like to think of myself like that. I like to think, okay, as a Spanish speaker, who am I? And I see that as an extension of my already built personality as a way to extend and as a way to explore. So I think that this mindset hack number 2 to overcome imposter syndrome is that we use creativity and we use an open mind to explore our own personality. Mindset hack number 3. Failure is your friend. One of the biggest and most discouraging things that I see when clients start to feel frustrated and want to give up. When they see that when they're making mistakes, that they don't see that as an opportunity to see where they need to work on, but rather they see it as failure. They identify some failings with them being a failure. This is the biggest hack that I can give you, that when you're learning a language, we must understand that failure is essential. Failure is necessary. It's a necessary part of the journey that we're on as language learners to speaking fluency, is that we are going to make mistakes, we're going to make errors, and this is not a problem. It doesn't speak about us as a person. It doesn't speak about our identity as a person. Just take that in for a minute. It doesn't mean we're a failure because we make mistakes. Some people's mindset is the fact that if they make a mistake, then this is an indication that they're not clever, that they're not smart, that they haven't studied enough. None of these things are true. Everyone makes mistakes when they speak another language. Everyone. Even native speakers like me make mistakes when I speak in English. It's a part of reality. It's a part of our lives. We have mistakes, and that is a part of failure, and failure is a part of the process of becoming excellent at something. If we don't go through the process of understanding that failure is a part, an essential part, and it's a helpful indication about where is our weaknesses. What we need to see is when we start to make mistakes, we've actually discovered in the brain that the pathways in the brain that are not yet strongly connected. This is something that is actually helpful in our process of becoming fluent, because we can identify which areas where our weaknesses are, and we can spend time in our study time addressing and paying attention and identifying these weaknesses and working on them. But we must have the mindset that when we encounter a failure, when we encounter a mistake, that it doesn't say anything about us as a human being, doesn't say anything about us as a person, as a bad person for speaking incorrectly, but actually what it does is shows us where we have a weakness, and weaknesses are a part of the journey, and so we're going to spend some time strengthening those weaknesses. Instead of seeing failure as an enemy, we're going to see failure as our friend and an indicator of how to take the next step on the language learning journey. This is number 4, the perfectionist trap. This is the mindset hack that I've noticed most with other people, friends of mine, who happen to be perfectionists. I don't know if you happen to be one of those people that you think that unless everything is absolutely perfectly said, it shouldn't be said. I have a good friend called Angie who has this problem. So she has a really good level of English and actually understands very well and can even explain to me in English why grammatical structures should be like this or should be like that. She actually has a great understanding and a great knowledge of English, but when it comes to having a conversation, she doesn't speak. She barely will engage in a conversation with me. Why? Because she thinks that she has to say everything perfectly. Are you one of these people that love the grammar? You love to do grammar exercises and you know a lot about English, but when it comes to a native conversation, when it comes to meeting new friends, when it comes to going for a job interview, you don't have any English confidence to speak, then this hack is for you guys. Perfectionist trap. Don't fall into the perfectionist trap. The perfectionist trap is that you want to have everything, well, perfect. So how did we help Angie to get overcome? How did we help my friend Angie to overcome this type of inferiority? How did we help her to overcome this? We stopped focusing on perfection. We stopped focusing on perfection as the standard by which we engage in conversation. The reason we communicate is that we want to connect with other people. If our mindset is that we want to be perfect, well, the majority of the time we're not even going to engage in a conversation because we're going to make mistakes. So what did we need to do? What was the mindset hack? Okay, I needed to understand that as my friend Angie, I wanted to get to know her, and my friend Angie wanted to get to know me. So how are we going to do that if we don't drop the bar of perfection and raise the bar of connection? What we want to do is, in a language, is be able to connect with other human beings, to improve our relationships, to meet new friends, to be able to explore new places, to go on adventures with people, to get to know one another's families, to get to know one another's stories. So, if you guys want to break through this perfectionist trap, you must raise the bar of connection. Connection must be the motivation for why you are communicating and why you're willing to make mistakes and why you're willing to not be perfect. The last mindset hack I want to give to you, which is the final bonus one, is enjoy the ride. Enjoy the ride. This is meant to be fun. This is meant to be something that we do to enjoy. This is meant to make our lives better. Speaking in English is meant to improve our lives, not be a burden and not be something that we resent doing. So enjoy the ride. Enjoy the fact that we're learning something new. Enjoy the fact that we're making mistakes. Enjoy the fact that we're going to make failures. But at the same time, we're going to be connecting. We're going to be learning how to communicate confidently and clearly. We're going to be improving our lives, whether that's in a job opportunity or whether that's in relationships with others. English and speaking English confidently and clearly is going to change our lives for the better. So let's enjoy that ride. We know that it's not going to happen overnight. We know that there's no magic pill, at least at the moment as far as I know, to take that will make us excellent English speakers. But we do know that if we take the right steps, if we do the hard work, if we put in the time and we put in the strategy to become a better English speaker, we are going to enjoy it. We're going to enjoy it. Enjoy the process. The language learning journey is a long one. Don't believe these people that say, okay, in 2 weeks I'm going to be able to speak fluently in a language. Language learning is a long one. I studied at university English, literature and philosophy. I was studying my own language to a university degree level, and I was still looking up words in the dictionary. Language learning takes time. Language learning is a journey. So my best advice that I can give to anyone is that we enjoy the ride. Okay guys, just to let you guys know that I actually have a company where we do English coaching and we help people out of intermediate purgatory, where you're stuck in that intermediate level of English and you want to, in a quick, short period of time, advance your English skills and get to that next level. So if you guys are someone who's interested in that, you're interested in identifying your weaknesses in English speaking, you want some help by identifying how to fix those ones, and to be able to get expert coaching on how to get out of those plateaus that you've found yourself in as an English speaker, then please get in contact. I'm going to leave a link down below of how you can call for a free 30-minute call, and I'm going to give you an evaluation on which areas you should be working on, how we can work on them, and how we can get you to your English language goals. So anyway guys, thank you so much for joining in for this free mindset hacking course, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it, and I hope it really helps you to get to your goals in English.